at like 7200 baud. We could play net trek so fast with each other. I had an external SCSI hard drive. That was, I know, right? That was about the size of your average Fantasy Flight game box and weighed probably close to 12 pounds. It was 30 megabytes. I bought it at a Macworld for like $5,000 when I had the Star Trek money. And I was like, I am never going to need another hard drive for the rest of my life. Like, what am I going to put on this? I guess if I have 1,000 hours, I could download like maybe 50 or 60 naked girls from the internet. But mom's going to pick up the phone and disconnect the modem. So. It was at that gaming con where I entered the Tetris tournament and I finished in like the top 10. I thought I was going to win the thing, so it's like nobody else is playing Tetris because clearly I'm the only one who has access to it on account of it being a bootleg. Turns out I was wrong, but it was great. It was really cool. And I remember going to that con and going to Open Gaming and just sitting down and playing Warhammer with guys. It was my introduction to grognards. And the Avalon had come out that year, and it was demoed for me and my friend by the designer, which was a really big deal to us. It was really cool. But I'd never gotten to go to Gen Con because Gen Con always fell over my son's birthday. And last year, my son turned 19, and my other son, Nolan, turned 19. And because he's 19, like, I'm lame, and everything I like is lame, and stuff is lame, and I'm boring. Things are boring. They're boring and they're lame. And they're lame because they're boring. And I'm like, come on, what? And what are you going to make the dinner I'm going to complain about? Like, come on. Oh, this is so boring. Can I drive your car to go see my friends? So he wasn't all that interested in me being around for his birthday. So I was like, hey, guess what? I'm going to Gen Con. So I went to Gen Con and I went through everything I had written about games and gaming, and I built a little chapbook of all these different gaming related stories to sell at Gen Con. And I called it Games Matter, and I really like it, and I think I might actually make it a thing that I put up in my little bookstore online, because I'm really proud of it. And I wanted to read you two stories that are in that. One for sure, and maybe a second one, depending on how long it takes. That are just fun for me to tell that I enjoy. This first story was written on June 3rd of 2009. I used to be a columnist for the LA Weekly, and I wrote it for the LA Weekly column. It's called Sounds of the Arcade. Being a writer means I have to open myself to as much sensory input as possible, as often as possible. It's like I have this giant sticky drift net that's always open around me. It traps sights and smells, feelings, and sounds, which usually jar loose some long forgotten memory or find their way into a future work of fiction. My son is home from college before he goes back for his summer session, so I've been making a concerted effort to cram as much writing as I can into limited working hours each day, so my evenings are free to spend with him and the rest of our family. This weekend, my wife and I took him out to dinner, where I found myself in front of a centipede arcade machine.
Nice.
Drawn there by the unmistakable sound of a player earning an extra guy. You know what it is? Something not will drift net, and I began to reel it in. I have to play this, I said, doing my best not to be as manic as Richard Dreyfuss behind the pile of mashed potatoes. They looked at each other warily. Okay, my wife said. I dropped a quarter into the slot, felt the trackball fit comfortably beneath my right hand, and began to play. And by the time the first flea dropped, I retrieved a childhood memory from the early 80s. Arcade games, I mean actual cabinets that took actual quarters, were ubiquitous throughout my childhood. After about 1978, you couldn't walk into a fast food restaurant or a convenience store and not find one. For my friends and me, businesses were identified not by their names or what they sold, but by the arcade games that were inside of them. I would ask the kid next door if he wanted to go play Robotron, and he knew to go ask his mom for permission to ride bikes up to 7-Eleven. When I was invited to a track and field meet, I begged my parents to let me travel one street farther than my usual boundaries across traffic-heavy Foothill Boulevard so I could meet my friends to go get a donut. Now, it never occurred to us to tell our parents that we were going to play video games, and as far as I can remember, they never asked. It may seem unnecessarily complicated now, but it's just how we did things in those days of two-tone corduroy OP shorts and Velcro wallets. I could play about a dozen or so different games in various locations within a mile of my house. From immensely popular machines like Donkey Kong to its sketchy knockoff cousin Crazy Kong. The Time Pilot and Gyrus at the sandwich shop next to the park, and there was this pizza parlor up by the bike shop that had an asteroids machine with a unique condition that set it apart from the asteroids machine at the grocery store that was 3 blocks closer. The owner turned it off every night. This meant that kids who got there early enough on a Saturday could get their names on the high score list without much effort or significant financial investment. A hollow achievement, perhaps, but also an opportunity to enter forbidden initials like ass and sex. Incidentally, if you go to my YouTube channel, there's a video in there titled Hi, I'm 12, and it's my wife and me playing this centipede machine on a different night. Where I put in ass as my initials and she puts in sex as her initials. Like typing 58008 into a calculator or licking a 9-volt battery, this is how I got my illicit kicks when I was in the 4th grade. The closest video arcade called Pinball Plus, which, I'm not making this up, had its name changed to the Enterprise when I was a teenager, was almost 15 minutes away, and I could rarely convince my parents to drive me there, so I didn't have the nearly limitless gaming choices I was convinced every other child in the world, whose parents, I rationally believe, took them to arcades and Disneyland on a weekly basis. About once a month, though, my parents would take my brother, my sister, and me up to Shakey's in La Crescenta for this school fundraiser, where there would be pizza, those Mojo potato things that I convinced are made from people, and video games. Now, just as Barry Mann sought the identity of the guy who put the bomb in the bomb, I too hope to one day find the man who put the game room into the average 80s pizza parlor so I can shake his hand. For a while, it was a Herculean task to convince my parents to drive me to an actual arcade. The game room at Shakey's was nearly as large as the dining area, and an entirely acceptable substitute, where I discovered Gorf, Vanguard, the pinball machines Comet and Cyclone, and Centipede. Centipede was released in 1980, so I was either 8 or 9 the first time I played it. We were at Shakey's. My sense is that it was the second Tuesday of the month, but my brain could be making that up to flesh out the story. And my mother had given me one of the precious few quarters I'd collect from her before the evening was over. So I'm 38 years old now. When I go to any place that has arcade games, I have to get like a card that I slide through the thing. Like, I own my own washer and dryer. And whenever I go someplace where I need to use a parking meter, they're all connected to your debit cards. I don't need quarters for anything. Like, they're useless. They're basically just money now. But when I get a quarter, part of me's like, oh, a quarter. Which I think will never leave my brain. It's so imprinted on who I am. It's whatever the good part of, it's the good opposite of post-traumatic stress disorder. Now I have one in my pocket from 1998. Oh. I still get excited when I see quarters that are older than me. I'm like, that's okay, we'll keep going. You're going to get there someday. Your hips are going to be strong sometime, I promise. My mother had given me one of the precious few quarters I'd collect from her before the evening was over. So I walked toward the game room. Before I could get inside, I was distracted by a sit-down version of a game I'd seen before, between the jukebox and one of those mechanical horses being frantically played by a kid who was about my age. I took a few steps closer and watched him, absolutely mesmerized by the complex sounds and the fast pace of the game. When he finished, I jumped into his still warm seat and began to play. This game was unlike anything I'd ever played before. It was fast, it was colorful, and it had a unique controller that set it apart from all the other joystick control machines I was used to. I don't know how my first game went, but I recall feeling like I just touched a monolith when it was done. Now, a little bit of historical context may help the damn kids today understand why I was so captivated. Until 1980, games were really simple as far as graphics and sound went, and most of the games I had access to were basically derivative of Space Invaders. In fact, the only game I clearly recall that was not in black and white was Galaxian. In 1980, though, everything changed. Carnival, Missile Command, Defender, Berserk, Tempest, Pac-Man, and Centipede were just a few of the instant classics from the class of 1980, which is when I believe the golden age of arcade games began. Well, my game ended quickly, but I lingered by the machine to watch other kids play it, and it only took a few games for me to figure out what sounds off with the spider, the scorpion, the flea, and the awarding of an extra turn. In fact, since that day 29 years ago, if there's a Centipede machine in an arcade, I can hear the sound of an extra guy being awarded above the din as clearly as an air raid siren. I don't know why, I don't care, it always makes me happy. Eventually, my dad used the family whistle to call me back for pizza, which I may have managed to chew once or even twice before declaring, "Oh, I'm so full, I can't eat any more. Can I have another quarter?" A familiar, bemused look passed between my parents, and I was soon back at the Centipede machine, which is being played by a couple in their 20s. It's strange the details that stick with me now. The guy had a thin mustache and carefully feathered dark hair. Wore a blue t-shirt and a gold chain around his neck. The girl had blonde hair, parted in the middle and equally feathered. She wore a white peasant shirt with blue and red embroidering, an elastic neckband, and a denim skirt. It's funny, I couldn't tell you what my wife was wearing when she left for work this morning, but I can see these two people as clearly as if I was yelling at them to get off my lawn. While they played, or more accurately tried to play, I enthusiastically provided a running commentary on their game. That's the spider! That's the spider! You gotta shoot it! You gotta shoot the spider before before it hits you. Oh, this is the scorpion! The scorpion poisons the mushrooms and makes the centipedes drive straight down at you, so you gotta shoot it before they get you. Oh, look out for the fleas! The fleas start out really slow, but they go really fast, and then they come down and like that. Oh, that sound means you get an extra man! Radical! 1980 was the year that I experimented with words like radical, bad meaning good, gnarly, stoked, and awesome. Thankfully, only awesome endures, because my brief flirtation with bitchin' came to an abrupt end in 1989 when a waitress thought I'd called her a bitch. It's a true story. A few minutes after I ruined their game, something squawked out of the restaurant's address system. "Our dinner's ready," the girl said. "I still have another life," the guy said. This convinces me, by the way, that if I were to have an arcade game in my house, and I were playing it, and it doesn't matter, I own the thing. It doesn't cost me anything to play this game. I can play it whenever I want to. If I had another man left, my wife could walk out of our bedroom in the sexiest come-do-me outfit in the history of life, and be like, "Come on, baby, let's go." And I'd be like, "Just a minute." I'm on the 3rd level of Tron, stop talking to me. Fucking light cycles. Also a true story. "I still have another life," the guy said. "Well, why don't you let him play it?" she said, pointing to me. I could tell that the guy wasn't happy about it, but he got it from the game, and he told me to take over for him.